Welcome to Pandemic, ladies and gentlemen. Are we having fun yet, boys and girls? I most certainly am, I must say. Pandemic is a multi-billion-dollar business. Coffee is for closers, and I've got a piece of it. There's an ancient Chinese curse that you might live in interesting times. That surely we have. And the Mandarin character for crisis is a unique marriage of two Mandarin characters, danger and opportunity, to remind us, boys and girls, that wherever there is danger, there is always opportunity. And fortune favors the bold. So you want to be a winner, you got to be bold. So you got to ask yourself in pandemic today, do you feel lucky? How do I feel? I feel with my hands, like a scientist would say. If you are still alive in a pandemic that has claimed the lives of over 900,000 Americans, boys and girls, leading the world in a global public health crisis that to date on a Super Bowl Sunday has claimed the lives of exactly 5,783,776 victims worldwide as of February 11th, 2022 at 7:21 p.m. Central European Time. According to the World Health Organization, my friend, maybe you are lucky. But even Harvard professor of astrophysics Richard Feynman can tell you that in Las Vegas, Sin City, where everything that happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, the real gamblers don't rely on dumb luck and serendipity make their luck. And if you are feeling pretty lucky, my friend, in a pandemic, where the strong survive and the weak perish, good for you. What does that tell you? You are ultimately a loser in this game. Just getting by in a pandemic on dumb luck. And this virus isn't stupid. So the good news is, or maybe the bad news is, today on Super Bowl Sunday, loser, you're fired. But you have a chance today to recoup your losses, boys and girls, because you have been chosen as a project management team to develop a solution for a pandemic pathogen that has infected exactly 77,516,009 Americans, and that has been attributed to the deaths of 915,425 as of 8 p.m. 2000 for my military friends. Hours Eastern Standard Time on February 12, 2022, according to the CDC COVID-19 data tracker, most of whom have been the elderly in nursing homes. Over 75%, even after the delivery of efficacious, not effective vaccines approved by the FDA. Almost 20,000 veterans in veteran care facilities, 912 kids, 13 of them in Virginia, in America. A known fatality high-risk age cohort, the elderly, from the very beginning. 80% of those in China, amongst almost 56,000 cases, at most experienced mild pneumonia. But today, there is a new product, and apparently the new push by Pfizer and Moderna to gain approval for vaccinations of children below the age of 5 has been put on a 2-month delay. A 2-month delay, perhaps in recognition of the fact that worldwide, according to UNICEF, there have only been around 23,000 fatalities amongst children under the age of 19. Only 910 children in America below the age of 18, and only 13 in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Like it's not a big emergency when you look at the whole picture of 5.7 million deaths. But in your news today, perhaps you have been diverted, wanted to get away from the pandemic, about a tantalizing story about the former President Donald Trump, involving what appears to be a total of 15 boxes containing classified information. We all like to hear about top secrets, looking at James Bond, for which a sudden emergency had arisen at the White House to have immediately returned. Now, how did you not notice 15 boxes in your White House of classified information until a year later? That's another question. I'm not in charge at the White House. What you may or may not know about classified information is that a former president actually retains his personal security clearance. And under Executive Order 12958, the president is the ultimate. The sitting president is the ultimate security classification authority to determine what is classified, what is not. So that means that, well, one, the president could just decide that it's not classified anymore. But also that means that he would possess a top secret personnel security clearance, even when he left the White House. And that simple possession of a top secret document by a former president is not of itself an indication of criminal conduct. But for the next few moments, with Valentine's Day approaching and the feelings of romance and love in the air, for those people that are into that kind of thing, feelings, we are going to talk a little bit for your edification about a Valentine's Day card that the Chief Justice is expecting from the current president involving handling of classified information, the big topic that is going on down in Florida about these 15 boxes. And this falls just like a box of classified information. You never know what's inside. And this falls under a legal doctrine that attorneys would describe in legalese and legal terms of art as executive privilege. Perhaps you have heard this term before, reading your Tom Clancy novels or watching your James Bond films. Well, boys and girls, according to the Legal Information Institute at the Cornell University, a very prestigious Ivy League college with a Tier 1 law school for those who are impressed by things like that. Shiny objects. Executive privilege is the power of the president and other officials in the executive branch to withhold certain forms of confidential communication from the courts and the legislative branch. And this would of necessity include those matters and documents that are designated as classified information, confidential, secret, and top secret. And according to these legal experts at Cornell University, not quite, of course, Fox News, the Constitution is silent on the executive power to withhold information from the court or Congress. The privilege is rooted in the separation of powers doctrine that divides the power of the United States government into legislative, executive, and judicial branches, or as AOC might describe as the four chambers of government, even though I only counted 3, executive, judicial, and legislative, and prefer the accepted term of branches of government. Chambers of Congress and branches of government may just be my personal preference, and you are perfectly free to disagree. But because executive privilege has not been expressly defined in the Constitution, this presents a condition of ambiguity. Things are not quite clear, seeing through a glass darkly and not face to face for our religious friends who close their church. Since in the case of Marbury v. Madison, cited 3, as you may recall from your American history classes or not, Chief Justice Marshall decided that it is the emphatic duty and province of the judiciary department to say what the law is. This falls squarely within the domain of the judiciary powers of the court to define exactly what are the limits and the range and the scope of the use of the claim of executive privilege by a sitting president, who, as we have said under Executive Order 12958, is the ultimate classification authority, who has the power to decide what is classified or not at the time. Classified or not at the time. Again, going back to our legal experts at Cornell University, said in reverse such tones, they assert that United States v. Nixon, also known as the Watergate scandal, has established that even a president has a legal duty to provide evidence of one's communications with his aides when the information is relevant to a criminal case, by requiring the president to turn over recordings of private conversations that he had with his aides. The court's decision has helped frame how to define executive privilege in a judicial setting. And we all have some familiarity with Rosemary Woods and the missing tapes from Watergate. We remember Watergate, the intimate connection of the investigative journalism by Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein at the Washington Post, who broke the scandal. Perhaps not the 9 reporters that were dispatched to the Watergate after a third-rate burglary to which the D.C. police sent only 2 police officers, or the reporter who was so anxious that he broke a window to get in to get the story. So now, why this is an important discussion on Super Bowl Sunday is probably a question when everyone is rooting for the LA Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals. Why is this important on the day before St. Valentine's Day, when you should be thinking about where you're going to be having dinner or seeing a movie or a play? Well, more likely than not, unless you are a jealous court watcher, you may have missed entirely a legal action that had been commenced after the celebration of Independence Day in the Federal District Court in Richmond on July 7th. If you are a Donald Trump fan or not, you may have thought the news about his case filed on that very same day. But you probably did not hear about this case, even though the lead defendant was Dr. Tony Fauci, who everyone seemed to either hate or love. You probably did not know that before the president had tasked the intelligence community and the Director of National Intelligence, or DNI, on May 26th to redouble efforts to determine whether a novel coronavirus had evolved zoonotically or had escaped from a laboratory, that a FOIA request had been submitted to the White House on March 23rd to determine whether or not the infectious dose and secondary attack rate, standard metrics, boring metrics for COVID-19 was classified information. There were no big press stories about it. A secret concealed from you by the press and by the White House, which decided not to make a big deal about it either, at least officially. Now, a lot of people are familiar with the term FOIA, and there have been a lot of stories about emails from Dr. Fauci that have been obtained under the Freedom of Information Act, beginning around June and July, a little after the tasking of the intelligence community, and well after this FOIA request about the classification of some very standard metrics. Maybe in editorial discretion, perhaps. The press did not think it was important or that you needed to know. But under the Freedom of Information Act, and put this in your civics toolbox, government agencies, including the president, do not have to provide information to you just because you have requested it in a FOIA request. And there are 9 exemptions that he can or they can use to refuse to disclose information to you. And the very important first numero uno exemption goes back to this idea of executive privilege. He can refuse to provide you information under Exemption 1 of the Freedom of Information Act if it is classified at the time. That kind of makes sense, common sense. You want to know about UFOs, aliens at Area 51, alien technology, or whatever. If they say that it is classified information, you don't have a need to know. So make like a Bayonne soprano and forget about it. However, remember the court has said that we have some rules, and a president is not a king. And Executive Order 12958, issued by Bill Clinton on April 17, 1995, established some rules for classified information that are binding even on a president. So he can't just classify anything he wants to, and whenever he wants to do so. I'm going to classify my ring. I'm going to classify you. I'm going to classify the planet Mars. And as Don Beyer said, the president is not a king. Where were you on April 17th, 1995? That may determine whether or not you knew this or not. You may not have even been born yet, but at that time, I was serving as the aide-de-camp to the commander for all U.S. Army Strategic Counterintelligence Council of the United States, with a top-secret clearance that's about as high as the president. I was not a classification authority who could slap a stamp and declare something classified. I'm going to classify my lunch. But let's just say that I possessed a need to know what was classified or not. And under Executive Order 12958, Part 1, Section 1.282, information may be originally classified on the terms of this order only if all of the following conditions are met, setting up a categorical argument, all-inclusive, without which none or sine qua non, for those who prefer to use the Latin terms to confuse everyone and impress your friends. And one of those sine qua non conditions is, are you ready for the list? Prepare to copy. 1, an original classification authority is classifying the information, okay? You gotta be the one of the big head honchos to classify stuff. And another one of those sine qua non conditions is coming in at number 2. Are you ready to copy? 2, the information is owned by, produced by, or for, or is under the control of the United States government. So we have to own it. And then they have some other sine qua non conditions. But furthermore, under Executive Order 12958, Part 1, Section 1.1b, information means any knowledge that can be communicated or documentary material, regardless of its physical form or characteristics, that is owned by, produced by, or for, or is under the control of the United States government. Hey, ET extraterrestrial, are you owned by the government? Boom, you're not classified. Is that clear? We have to own it to make it classified information. Now, at the beginning of this video, what did I say? A little memory test. I most certainly am having fun in this pandemic, I must say. I stated that pandemic is a multi-billion-dollar business coffee for closers, and I've got a piece of it. And that was not just hyperbole. And why? Joe Biden says the proof is in the pudding, and I'm putting it this way. I filed the FOIA request on March 23rd to request if the infectious dosing secondary attack rate was classified information, or to determine if we owned the subject of the information that some have said was had originated in the laboratory and some have said is zoonotically evolved. But the president decided that he was not going to answer, even say it, or was classified, asserting implicitly what we've been talking about, an executive privilege. And immediately after the celebration of Independence Day, I took that matter to court, filing with the Federal District Court in Richmond, but the White House still decided not to respond, and the court decided not to have a hearing. And so in December, after an attempt to quash the case at the end of October, we filed an appeal with the Fourth Circuit in December, and that placed us in a position to get on the shadow docket, just like in U.S. v. Nixon, for a quick decision by the Supreme Court, where it is the emphatic duty and province of the judiciary to say what the law is, Marbury v. Madison. And our application was presented to the Chief Justice, John Roberts, and assigned the record number of 21-6868 in the matter of Webb v. Fauci, which has not been discussed by the White House, but been mentioned in the press. But it involves the White House and is before the Chief Justice. We can agree not to disagree that is a pretty big piece of the pandemic, and that's not just hyperbole, and I own it. And on the day after the Super Bowl Sunday, when we will know whether it was the Cincinnati Bengals or the LA Rams who prevailed on the gridiron and get the privilege to wear a Super Bowl ring, or you get to boast that your team won, on St. Valentine's Day, when lovers and incurable romantics are sending a dozen long-stem roses and celebrating a holiday with a romantic dinner, the White House has a deadline to the Chief Justice to respond as to why, presumptively, under the claim of executive privilege, there has been no response under a FOIA request they had acknowledged as accepted on March 23rd, why they made not official or even unofficial mention of it during briefings or press conferences, and why it now requires the intervention of the Supreme Court. All just for me. So, boys and girls, while many may be excited about which team wins the football game or not, there will be other football games. There is only one pandemic, And let's just say that I am just waiting for a message from my top secret lover on St. Valentine's Day, and coffee is for closers. You're fired.
Percent of businesses fail. Give a less than 5% chance of getting COVID-19. Are you a loser or are you a winner? This briefing is unclassified, as you will. Honest.
My friend, unless your daddy happens to own the railroad, we're going to enjoy a very brief acquaintance.
Hey, sugar, where's my coffee?
You still here? I told you, you're fired. Go away.
This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.
You're fired.